Hi, I'm Paul Brodie. We're in my shop. Welcome. Mitch is behind the camera. I'm the fabricator, he's the filmmaker, so we have our roles. I was in a motorcycle shop last week and I was buying some things for my trials bike, and the owner is Bob, and Bob looks at me and he says, "Is Mitch a real person?" And I just, who do you think's behind the camera and doing all that? Yes, Mitch is a real person. And then I was on the phone with a friend. He lives in Seattle. His name's Gary, and he watches what we do here. And it was very interesting for me because I know exactly what goes on in the shop here. And from the outside, he made the assumption that Mitch is in the shop 4 to 5 days a week filming. But that's not true at all. Mitch shows up on Tuesday morning at 9:30 and says, "What are we doing?" On Sunday, I was at the swap meet, and I went with this other friend, Eve, and it was a bicycle swap meet. Got the table laid out. I'm in my seat, 6 feet away. Eve's in his seat. A man walks up. He goes straight to Eve and says, "Are you Mitch?" So, no, that was not Mitch. Mitch is a mystery man. So, moving on. I have been wrong, and I have been corrected, not once, but twice actually. And others who are more educated and worldly wise than me have set me straight. And you're probably thinking, what the heck is he talking about? This goes back a couple of weeks now, and this is what I called an intake manifold. And I was corrected because when it's a single manifold, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. When there's one carburetor and a single cylinder, you can't call it a manifold because a part of the word manifold is many. Many means many. And so one carb that goes into a couple of cylinders, or 3 or 4 or more, that is a manifold. You cannot call this a manifold. Although I still think of it as a manifold because all my life, that's what I've known since I was a little boy. So anyway, that was one of the things where I was wrong. So I acknowledged that he was right because I looked it up online as well. I went to Wikipedia and I looked up manifold. And he is technically correct, but I told him that I'll still probably call it a manifold, and so he called me a fool, and here we are. So the second thing was that this intake stub goes on to a couple of studs, and I told you that they were BSF studs, and I was wrong. A BSF stands for British Standard Fine, but these are actually BSC, British Standard Cycle Thread. So it's a 1/4 inch, they're both 1/4 inch, and 26 threads per inch. What the difference is BSF has an included thread angle of 55 degrees, and BSC has an included angle of 60 degrees. So even if you had a magnifying glass, it would be very hard to tell the difference between 55 and 60. Back in the 50s and 60s, there was a movement to have the worldwide standard made 55. Whitworth was 55, and actually it's supposed to be a stronger thread. And I'm sure that there's going to be some comments about this, other people that are more knowledgeable than me. Anyway, that didn't happen. All the threads in the world now are 60. That's the standard. As you know, or might have heard, I owned a Cub when I was 15 years old, and I still remember I was working on it, and I thought, I'm going to take off the gas tank. So this is what I did. I took off the bolts, and I popped off the tank, and I was shocked that there was no frame tube from here to here, from the top of the head tube back to the seat tube, or whatever you want to call this. I was shocked because it looks weak here. I was only 15, but I knew that that was bad engineering. But what's happening is the gas tank is acting as a stressed member. And these, see these mounts? These go all the way through the gas tank. Each of these is one piece, and inside it's kind of got a little bit of a shape to it so it doesn't flex sideways. It's actually not as bad as it first looks when you realize this is a stress member. And one of the advantage, I guess, that they get is that there's no huge a tunnel that goes through the tank, so you get more fuel. I weighed the gas tank because I'm thinking this is a pretty porky tank. 3,400 grams or 7.5 pounds. That's what it weighs. If I had an alloy tank, I know it would be nowhere near that, but I want to keep it a little bit stock. So this is what we're going with. It's going to be burgundy, and the bottom is going to be silver. So I think it's going to be quite nice, and the frame is all black. First order of business is to take off the fender and to cut the frame loop here and here and make it straight. I'm not sure, I've got an idea of what to do, but until I actually take it off and trace around it and see just how equal it is, that's what we're going to do. That obviously has to be fixed. Come on, there you go. This is being sprayed with a spray bomb, and the paint comes off pretty easy. You can see all the braze there. I would call it a handmade frame. I've been wondering how the wall thickness is on these tubes. I don't think it's going to be super thin. I'm guessing an 1/8 of an inch, so we'll find out just how thick the tube is. So I'm taking masking tape and I'm going to wind it around here, and that's where the hacksaw is going to cut right there. So it'll be the same on both sides, and if I keep the hacksaw level with the edge of the masking tape, I'll get a nice cut at a 90. That's what I'm thinking. I've seen people use hose clamps as well, and then they cut right down on the side of the hose clamp, but there's always a bit of a bulge where the actual clamping mechanism is, so I wouldn't use a hose clamp. Masking tape is cheaper, and you don't put hacksaw marks into the side of a hose clamp. It's going to be interesting to see if it springs apart or whatever it does, because I'm sure there's some kind of tension in here. No, it didn't spring apart at all. It's that's a good sign. There we go. I don't see a seam inside here. I can't feel one with my little finger. The wall thickness, 0.61, so 1/16 of an inch. I would have guessed it would have been thicker than that, but Edward Turner wanted to save metal. He wanted to use the least amount of metal in a motorcycle as possible. There's an air hole. There you go. There's the air hole for brazing. I think it looks like an air hole. There we go. Oh yeah, there's an air hole right there. Kind of looks like braze. Because if it's braze, I can just melt that off. That would be easier. Then I could use them again, possibly. No, it's steel. It's been steel welded on there. That's not bronze at all. So we're gonna cut these off. We're gonna grind them down. We'll have to make new ones. That's on the menu. Getting hot in here again. Is the grinding louder than the excavator next door, or is it vice versa? If you don't realize, my neighbor's building a brand new house and it's not small. Oh, that's wrong. When you're grinding, you have to be careful that you don't go down under the surface of the tube, because if you do, then you have to fill it up or blend it in, but then you have a low spot that's hard to see. But so it's a little bit of an art to do this nicely. There's a little low spot from the factory. Can you see that right there? I guess the weld undercut very, very slightly because it's still got paint in it. Okay, we're at belt sander time. I'm going to cut this down a little bit because this, it doesn't form so well because it's kind of on the wide side, but if I do that, now I've got a different width. This is all going to be painted and it's going to be on the underside of the thing. So yeah, this goes towards the fender. You're never going to see this, but we'll all know what it looks like. And I want it to be nice. This is a spray bomb paint. Look how easy that paint comes off. Our next step is to mark the center of this hoop. So I'm taking a pencil. I've got cardboard. I don't want to do that, and I don't want to do that. I'm trying to hold it so the pencil, like I said, draws a line that's perpendicular to the edge of the tube. So I flipped it over. Oh, it's fairly symmetrical. Fairly. It's out a little bit, but not. I thought it might be out much more, but it's not bad. So I'm going to make some lines now. We're going to try and find the center. So there's a center right there. We can try this. I got 130 there, so if I go 65 here, that's going to be more or less close. So that should be the center of the hoop. Pretty close. So you can see how I do things here. So I'm lining this up like that, and I'm going to put a line right there. Then I flip it over, and I line it up again, make a mark. Then we see how the lines add up. I'll just extend these, and the center will be right between these two. I think that's the best way to do it. So I'll put this on here, I'll line it up. I mean, we're talking a 1/16 there. Okay, I'd say that's the middle right there. See what's happening? If I hold this right up to where they came off, can you see how it's off? It wants to go over like that. That's about where it wants to be. So we have a gap of, let me see, what is that? That's almost 1/4 of an inch. It's almost like we got to take off 1/4 of an inch here, something like that. Okay. Oh, look at that. That looks good. That was a good guess of how much to cut off. Almost like I know what I'm doing. Almost. I added on these bars like we had on last week, I believe, and they come from the front part of the frame. They go on either side of the seat lug. That's where the seat mounts. And it comes back. And for a 60-year-old frame, that is pretty darn close. So this is the way of double checking that this is where I want it to be. So I'm happy with that. So we're gonna, a little bit of filing, make some inserts, a little bit of tack welding. That 60-year-old dust coming out. 63-year-old dust. I have to figure out the average ID, so I'm going to measure this way and this way, maybe at a diagonal too, and figure out just where we're at. These are called telescoping gauges or snap gauges. Snap gauge is kind of the slang. And you put it in at an angle, you bring it up over center, and you measure. I got 754. Ooh. 738. Can you see there's a lot of difference there? Because what happened was when they bend the tube or form it, it becomes ovalized. So when I make an insert into here, I kind of go, I usually go halfway. So we got 741. And if we go this way, 738. I'm going to try for 740. I'll make up one and then we'll just see how it fits. I found some thick walled tube. It's got a welded seam in there. First I thought it was DOM, but with the welded seam it's ERW. Means a welded tube. So it's mild steel, but it's a nice thick wall. So, and it's 752. We want 740. So there's just a little bit to come off. We'll do a trial cut and see how the hoop fits over it. There we go. Okay, see there we go. That's a pretty good fit because that means I can hammer it in there. We should also see how it fits on the Cub frame. So that's the piece we took out of the lathe. Oh, look at that. Aha. Okay, so this side is good for the hoop. Oh yeah, well, so it looks like we got two different sizes going on here. So this size is going to work for this and the hoop, but we need a different size for this one because that's how it is. So I'm going to make a cut here and see if I can get a good fit. We'll take this over to the frame. It's easier to take this over to the frame than to bring the frame over here and try and fit it on. Oh yeah, look at that. So at first it goes in pretty easy and then it tightens up, so that's okay. Okay, we're going to do a little tic-tac on the top of each one. It was a fusion pass. This is installation. So this is the loose side, this is the tight side, obviously. It's going. That was a good fit. That is a good fit. Okay, check the alignment. It looks like we're good there. So what we have to do now is to check the height. I have to remake all this rusty stuff. It's got to be stainless or something. We've come down probably 5 millimeters or something. So let me grab a 2x4 and see if I can bend it up a little bit. Let's see what happens with just a little bit of a push. Oh, look at that. See how it goes up? That's good. We're pretty darn close. We're going to move this over. We're going to tack it and maybe push it up a little bit more and just see where it wants to stay. But this is a good start. Okay, so it's got to come up, or it wants to come up just a bit. Okay, so that's up a little higher. That's fine. So what I was thinking of doing is this is going to fit now. Look at that. That fits. So I'll put some added force on the hoop from the car jack, and that's when I'll tack the bottom. Because it'll pull it a little bit, and then when I tack it, it's going to probably pull down just a touch. Well, we got extra clearance. I think what we need to check is to put on the fender. It's okay to have it a little bit higher. I think we need to add the fender on here and then add the seat, because that's where the seat mounts, right on the shock bolts right there. And then we'll just make sure that it's got a little bit of clearance there. Just doesn't have to have a lot, but just a little bit. Oh, look at that. That works pretty good. So that's basically up where I want it. It's good to check these things now and not later. There we go. Oh, look at that. Just, okay, so this is a little bit higher than what it was. And we still have 1/8 of an inch there. So that's very good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take off the fender. I'm going to take some masking tape and go right over the top here. And then I'm going to peel off the masking tape. I'm going to measure halfway, put the tape back on, and then this fender has to line up with the center. It's like a double check. So we'll do that next. Okay, so all I'm doing here is marking the middle, right? And it's 150, so 75. Okay, so there's the center of the fender. Okay, so I've got a little bit of movement in here, but when that's like that, now we can make those pieces to mount. You see how this is a little bit thicker? This is 1/8 inch, this is maybe a little bit over a 1/16. This is a little stronger. I'm marking out for the hole. We're gonna make the hole first, a 1/4 inch hole. I'm just matching up the radius on the end, so I know that I'm going to make it look basically stock. Okay, we're going out to that machine right there, the belt sander. There's my cardboard template, so then I know where I can make a bend or where I shouldn't make a bend. Okay, so what we have here is a cardboard template and the real thing. We're going to make this fit on the bike and then we'll match this. So if we put a bend in there like that. Oops. What about if we do that? So this bends up a little bit like that. So why don't we do a bend first? We'll do that in the vise, and then we'll cut it off, and we'll see how it works. I'm going to bend it over the soft drawers so that I don't get a sharp crease. Oh! Well, that's very interesting. Cold rolled. That's a new one for me. You don't normally have to heat cold roll to bend it. I don't know if I've ever seen that before. It's not like I was bending it over the vise, which has a sharp edge. This has a radius to it. So I did not expect that at all, because it never even went to a 90. It only went to about there. You can see how it matches up. And then it just shattered. That's bizarre. Okay, so this one bent fine. That's what was supposed to happen. Okay, we are Tig Tac gone. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed frame mods on a Tiger Cub. Mitch and I like coffees. If you buy us some coffee, we would give you the big thumbs up. Thank you. See you next week. Take care.